Operating secretly, the Kremlin has, over the years, effectively exploited Russia's criminal networks in Europe to advance its political agendas through a combination of funding, patronage, and strategic partnerships. This covert collaboration allows the Kremlin to exert influence, amplify its power, and undermine European security in ways that are often difficult to trace. This goes to show that Russia's invasion of Europe had long started before Ukraine, through strategically undermining major European powers with the help of an intricately laid chain of criminal networks. Before we jump into the video, hit that subscribe button and join our community, and watch the video till the very end as we unravel mind-blowing mysteries. In September 2011, two Chechens who were allegedly involved in the January suicide bombing at Moscow's Domodedovo airport, which claimed the lives of 37 people, were shot and killed along with a companion as they were leaving an Istanbul mosque following Friday prayers. The Federal Security Service, which according to prosecutors, was battling Chechen groups in Turkey, including those connected to Chechnya's insurgency against Moscow, had identified two of the hitmen as Russian nationals, according to an indictment cited in a major Turkish newspaper. However, later reporting by the BBC revealed that one of the suspects was part of a Moscow crime gang. Additionally, the BBC revealed that another Russian who was suspected of killing a Chechen militant in Turkey in 2015 also came from organized crime and was also charged by Turkish authorities with working for Russian intelligence. Especially since 2014, there has been a steady trickle of cases suggesting that Moscow is using organized crime as a covert tool for the dark aspects of its foreign policy. Publicly available details are often scant, as organized crime investigations and the consequent trials tend to be lengthy, and details are kept under wraps until court proceedings are over. However, there has been a noticeable increase in the employment of criminals to achieve Russia's foreign policy objectives, according to the consensus of the European security establishment. When needed, the political police in the Kremlin in the Soviet era showed a willingness to use criminals as resources or recruits. Still, under President Vladimir Putin, Russia has changed its scope and strategy. The Kremlin has increasingly embraced what has been referred to as a mobilization state strategy in response to the deterioration of relations with the West following Euromaidan. Russia has been using any possible alternative foreign policy levers, from nationalist oligarchs to disruptive media sources, in response to the West's overwhelming economic, military, and soft power. The Kremlin makes precise demands of the gangsters who are receptive to Russian pressure. Unlike in the past when it would only point out unacceptable behaviors, Russia's practices in this area also differ from most other countries. One may look at US instances ranging from cooperation with the mafia in the 1943 invasion of Sicily to the 1985 to 87 Iran-Contra transactions with drug traffickers to see that collaboration with criminals by governments in accomplishing foreign policy aims is by no means exclusive to Moscow. However, in fairness, these cases are extremely rare, singular, and typically carried out in the context of open and undeclared wars. It is striking in contrast that Russia appears to be deploying organized crime connections abroad in ostensible peacetime, reflecting that Moscow sees the current geopolitical clash with the West as an existential political struggle analogous to war. Like the American examples above, some aspects of Russian governmental collaboration with criminal networks can be observed in armed conflicts, whether they are proclaimed or not. Local criminals are purportedly acting as self-defense volunteers in Crimea, Ukraine, alongside the notorious Little Green Men and some of the forces supporting the rebels backed by Russia in Donbas, including members of organized crime. Other cases involving alleged state criminal linkages prop up Russia's interests abroad more subtly. For instance, several US and European counterintelligence officials told me they think Russian criminal groups engaged in human trafficking secretly smuggled him to Russia, or else into Greece for later exfiltration by Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, after the suspected paymasters of the notorious US-based Russian sleeper spies vanished from Cyprus following his arrest there in 2010. In line with its denial of all such accusations in this piece, Russia denied working with criminals. However, the principal task tasks that the new Russian Crimintern expects of criminal gangs typically include either intelligence gathering or the production of chernaya kassa, black cash, money that has no objective relation to the Russian state but helps fund some of its operations. Many European security services have the belief that this money is then used to support influential political people or media organizations. It is also possible to clean the operational funding of intelligence services through criminal money laundering networks. An expert from the Italian Guardia di Finanza, or financial police, claims that this typically entails small-scale operations through private bank accounts, rather than elaborate, multi-beneficiary schemes like the recently reported laundromat from 2008 to 2014, or the 1998 to 1999 money laundering operation of the Bank of New York. The Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project recently published information on the laundromat from 2008 to 2014. For instance, Estonian security services informed me that the cigarette smuggling gang he was investigating was being given a free pass to transport its goods across the Russian frontier after Estonian security officer Eston Kover was kidnapped across the border by an FSB commando team. Russia denies the charge despite compelling evidence from its border guards. They said that in exchange, the gang members conducted surveillance on locations and people of interest to Moscow, as have other smugglers, and paid a portion of their proceeds back into ordinary bank accounts for the FSB's use. According to a Bulgarian security officer, a similar case, which seems to have stalled since 2017, involved smugglers working through the port of Varna, bringing in drugs and counterfeit consumer goods from Odessa. These were Ukrainians working for a Russian-based gang. The working hypothesis was that they were not only feeding information on Odessa back to Moscow via contacts in the Russian expat community in Varna, but since 2016, also being taxed a share of their profits, as Chaya Kassa funds paid through the accounts of their contacts in Varna. Although it was only conjecture, he thought this was in exchange for some impunity for the gang's bosses in Moscow. European security officials' concern over using illicit funds to set up potential listening sites and staging areas for Russian intelligence is also growing. A German counterintelligence agent informed me that several additional houses in Germany and other Nordic European countries had been purchased by criminals, but appeared to be used very occasionally. The fact that they are all close to, sometimes even overlooking strategic ports, bases, and airfields was the unifying factor. In his opinion, the Russian intelligence agencies, particularly military intelligence, formerly GRU, would use the items the criminals purchased for their own reasons. Similar rumors about a recent Finnish raid near Turku, however, are probably untrue. Similar to this, the Kremlin has long used hackers as support for its own online espionage and disruption activities. They are increasingly using cyber criminals, some of whom are explicitly recruited into government service, rather than so-called patriotic hackers, often more eager than skilled, and more frequently using them for cash or to avoid going to jail. According to some security experts, they may also be used for money-making endeavors that aim to raise chernaya kassa funding because they have been used to break into international networks. During the Soviet era, the Kremlin actively employed criminals to further its objectives. The KGB trained black marketeers and hard currency speculators dealing with Western tourists as informants, and was willing to finance, arm, and shelter terrorists working in the West. Indeed, the Cheka, the Bolsheviks' first political police, recruited bandits and gangsters for its needs, and later Vori, members of the criminal subculture, became crucial to the running of the Gulag camps. In 2000, when Putin was first elected president of the nation, he applied what he had learned at the federal level. In essence, the state made an agreement with organized crime. If you don't oppose or humiliate the state, you won't be viewed as an enemy of the state. Even criminal kingpins feared arrest if they crossed the line. Thus, this did not imply complete immunity. The police and the courts continued to pursue the criminals. The majority of the gangs were content to accept it, since they had survived a decade of turf fights and had accomplished substantial sums of money they wanted to maintain. The Kremlin's use of criminals as assets poses multifaceted challenges for international security. It undermines the rule of law, as state-sponsored criminals operate beyond the reach of justice systems. Furthermore, it perpetuates instability by fueling illicit activities such as money laundering, drug trafficking, and arms smuggling. This destabilizing impact can weaken nations and regions, enabling the Kremlin to exert influence and advance its geopolitical objectives. The Kremlin's use of criminals as assets abroad represents a dangerous blend of state power and criminal networks. This strategy enables Russia to influence global affairs through illicit means while maintaining a degree of deniability. It is imperative for the international community to recognize and address this issue head-on. By strengthening collaboration, promoting legal frameworks, and tackling the root causes of criminality, the global community may be able to minimize the Kremlin's ability to exploit criminal assets, promoting stability, and upholding the principles of justice and the rule of law. Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below. Subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.